The verdant planet of Aloria hung like an emerald jewel against the vast tapestry of space. From orbit, its swirling cloud patterns resembled delicate brushstrokes of white against deep blue oceans and lush green continents. This beautiful world was home to the Aruni civilization, a peaceful and prosperous society that had long ago chosen a path of minimal militarization. Ambassador Selena stood at the observation deck of the survey vessel Aurora, her slender frame silhouetted against the panoramic view of her homeworld. Her iridescent skin shimmered slightly in the artificial light of the ship, shifting between pale blue and lavender hues that reflected her contemplative mood. She had been away for 6 months, leading a diplomatic mission to catalog and establish initial contact protocols with newly discovered sentient species in neighboring systems. "The final preparations are complete, Ambassador," said her aide, approaching with a datapad. "We'll be departing for home within the hour." Selena nodded, her large, almond-shaped eyes remaining fixed on Aloria. "Any word from the Central Council?" "Just the usual formalities. They're eager for your reports on the species you've encountered." Selena smiled. The Aruni prided themselves on their diplomatic finesse and cultural understanding. In the 3 centuries since they had achieved faster-than-light travel, they had encountered dozens of other civilizations, each with their own unique cultures and technological developments. The Aruni approach had always been one of careful observation and respectful engagement. Deep within the storage holds of the Aurora, nestled among rarely used emergency equipment, sat an ancient communications beacon. The device, a relic from the early days of Aruni space exploration, was designed for only one purpose: to broadcast a distress signal on a specific frequency in the event of civilization-ending catastrophe. It had never been activated in the 200 years since its installation, and few among the crew even remembered its existence. The device was considered obsolete by modern standards, but tradition and Aruni conservation ethics meant that functional technology was rarely discarded. Instead, the old beacon remained in place, its systems periodically maintained by automated protocols, a silent guardian against a catastrophe that the peaceful Aruni never truly expected to face. As the Aurora prepared for its return journey, none aboard could have imagined that this forgotten piece of technology would soon trigger events that would forever change the course of interstellar relations. Thousands of light-years away, on the harsh, gravity-heavy world designated Sol 3, known to its inhabitants as Earth, Colonel Marcus Reynolds reviewed the latest security reports in his underground command center. Earth's military forces had evolved from centuries of warfare on a planet that many off-world species considered uninhabitable, a death world where gravity, atmospheric pressure, temperature extremes, and indigenous predators had forged humanity into resilient survivors. Reynolds, a career military officer with 25 years of service, represented the pinnacle of what the galaxy's other species had come to call Deathworlders, humans who could endure physical conditions that would cripple or kill most other sentient beings. Standing 6'3" with a muscular build hardened by Earth's punishing gravity, his weathered face bore the scars of both combat and the harsh environment of his homeworld. "Sir," called out Lieutenant Jameson from the communication station, "we're picking up something unusual on the deep space array." Reynolds approached the console, his interest piqued. Earth maintained a vast network of listening posts throughout this sector of the galaxy, a prudent security measure for a species whose natural physicality often made other civilizations nervous. "What have you got?" It's an SOS signal, sir. Old format, but unmistakable. It's coming from the Aruni system." Reynolds frowned. The Aruni were known to Earth only by reputation, a peaceful species from a gentle world, with minimal military capacity. They were one of many civilizations that Earth had observed from a distance, but had not yet formally contacted. "Are you certain? The Aruni don't even have significant defensive capabilities. Who would attack them?" "The signal is authentic, sir, and it's broadcasting on what we call the dead band, frequencies that only species from high-gravity worlds can perceive without specialized equipment. Reynolds felt a chill run down his spine. That band was primarily used by Earth and a handful of other Deathworld civilizations. If the Aruni were broadcasting on that frequency, it could only mean one thing. They were desperately reaching out to the strongest, most resilient species they knew of. "They're calling for help," Reynolds said grimly. "And they're calling for us." Within the hour, Reynolds had convened an emergency meeting of Earth's Unified Defense Council. Representatives from the world's most powerful nations gathered virtually, their faces displayed on the massive screens surrounding the circular conference table. "The signal is unambiguous," Reynolds explained, standing at the center of the room. "The Aruni beacon is broadcasting a continuous distress call, indicative of an extinction-level threat. Our analysts believe it could be an invasion force or some kind of natural disaster they're unprepared to handle." "The Aruni have no significant defensive technology," said General Ibarra, the Nigerian representative. "If they're under attack, they would be virtually helpless. Which is precisely why they've reached out on the Deathworlder frequency." Reynolds responded, "They know what we're capable of." Council Chairwoman Helena Zhao leaned forward, her expression grave. "What exactly are you proposing, Colonel?" "A rapid deployment of our interstellar fleet. We have over 1,000 combat-ready vessels that could reach the Aruni system within 48 hours, using our newest FTL drives. We can assemble a rescue force capable of addressing virtually any threat they might be facing. That would represent the largest military mobilization in Earth's history," pointed out the Russian representative. "And for a species we've never even formally met." Reynolds' jaw tightened. "With respect, Counselor, the Aruni wouldn't activate an emergency beacon unless they were facing annihilation. As the only military power within range capable of responding, I believe we have a moral obligation to act." "And a strategic one," added Admiral Chen from the Asian Alliance. "If there's a hostile force capable of threatening an entire civilization, we need to know about it before it reaches our borders." The discussion continued for hours, weighing the risks and implications of such a massive intervention. Finally, Chairwoman Zhao called for a vote. "The motion to deploy our fleet to the Aruni system passes," she announced. "Colonel Reynolds, you will command this operation. Your primary objective is to render assistance to the Aruni civilization and neutralize any threats. Your secondary objective is to establish formal diplomatic contact." Reynolds nodded, already mentally preparing for the enormous logistical challenge ahead. "We'll deploy within 12 hours. One final point, Colonel," Zhao added. "While our primary mission is humanitarian, ensure our forces are prepared for any contingency. We don't know what we're facing, and the safety of Earth must remain our ultimate priority." "Understood, Madam Chairwoman." As the council adjourned, Reynolds couldn't shake a sense of foreboding. Earth's military had never deployed in such numbers before, and never so far from home. Whatever was happening in the Aruni system had to be catastrophic to warrant such a response. Little did he know that across the galaxy, on peaceful Eloria, the situation was far different from what Earth's leaders imagined. On Eloria, Tiran Var, chief engineer at the Planetary Communications Hub, stared at his monitoring screens with growing concern. For the past several hours, unusual energy fluctuations had been detected, emanating from an old storage facility connected to the hub. "I don't understand it," he muttered to his assistant. "That section hasn't been active in decades." "Could it be a malfunction in the monitoring system?" suggested the younger technician. "No. These readings are too consistent." Var's brow furrowed as he examined the data more closely. "Something in there is drawing power and transmitting. A lot of power." After dispatching a maintenance team to investigate, Var received a startling report. An ancient emergency beacon, part of Eloria's original planetary defense system, had somehow activated and was broadcasting continuously. "Shut it down immediately," he ordered, suddenly alarmed. "We're trying, sir," came the response. "But the system is locked in emergency protocol. We can't override it remotely." Var cursed under his breath. The old beacon systems had been designed with redundancies that made them nearly impossible to deactivate once triggered, a feature that had seemed prudent during the uncertain early days of space exploration, but now presented a significant problem. "What exactly is it broadcasting?" he asked. "An SOS signal, sir, on multiple frequencies, including some we don't typically use anymore." Var felt his stomach sink. An erroneous distress call could have serious diplomatic implications, especially if received by species unfamiliar with the Aruni. "I'm going to need to inform the Central Council," he said gravely. "And someone get me Dr. Varick from the Historical Technology Division. If anyone knows how to shut that thing down, it would be him." Within hours, the situation had escalated to a planetary crisis. The Central Council of Oloria convened an emergency session, with Var and Dr. Varick presenting the troubling news. "The beacon is broadcasting a Category 1 distress signal," Dr. Varick explained, his normally calm demeanor showing signs of strain. "In the early days of our space program, such a signal was reserved for only the most catastrophic scenarios. Essentially, it communicates that our civilization is facing extinction and requires immediate intervention." "Can it be disabled?" asked Council Leader Terran. "Not easily," Varick admitted. "It was designed to be tamper-proof, operating on an isolated power source with multiple redundancies. We're working on a solution, but it may take days to safely deactivate without risking damage to our primary communication systems." "Days?" Terran's voice rose slightly. "Who might be receiving this signal in the meantime?" Var exchanged a worried glance with Varick before responding. "That's the most concerning part. Council Leader, the beacon is broadcasting on several frequencies, including one that's primarily perceivable by species from high-gravity worlds." "Deathworlders," whispered one of the counselors, using the common term for such species. "Yes," Var confirmed, "including the humans of Sol 3. A heavy silence fell over the council chamber. The Aruni had observed Earth from a distance for decades, cataloging the remarkable adaptive capabilities of humans and their unprecedented military development. While the Aruni had never established formal contact with Earth, they were well aware of humanity's reputation as formidable warriors with a complex history of both destructive conflicts and noble interventions. "If the humans believe we are facing an extinction-level threat," Council Leader Terran didn't need to finish the thought. "We need to send a clarification immediately," another counselor suggested. "We're trying," Var explained. "But the beacon is creating significant interference with our regular communications channels. Any message we send might be corrupted or misinterpreted." "What about Ambassador Selena?" Terran asked. "Her ship was due to return today." "The Aurora entered our system approximately 3 hours ago," reported the communications officer. "But we've been unable to establish clear contact due to the interference." "This is unacceptable," Terran declared, rising from her seat. "Dr. Varick, I want every available resource directed toward deactivating that beacon. Var, assemble your best communications experts and find a way to broadcast a clarification that can't be misinterpreted. And someone get me a direct line to the Aurora. Ambassador Selena needs to be briefed immediately." As the Aruni leadership scrambled to contain the situation, they remained unaware that their inadvertent distress call had already set in motion the largest military deployment in human history. Aboard the flagship Dauntless, Colonel Marcus Reynolds oversaw final preparations for the massive rescue operation. The enormous vessel, nearly a kilometer in length, represented the pinnacle of Earth's military technology. Around it, hundreds of other warships formed up, their hulls gleaming in the light of Earth's sun. "Fleet status," Reynolds commanded, standing on the bridge with his hands clasped behind his back. 973 vessels combat ready, sir," reported his executive officer, Commander Reyes. "The remaining ships will join us at the rendezvous point near the Arcturus relay station." Reynolds nodded, studying the tactical display showing the massive armada. Never before had humanity assembled such a force. Each ship carried not only advanced weapon systems, but also elite soldiers, men and women born and trained on Earth, whose physical capabilities were considered extraordinary by the standards of most other species in the galaxy. "What do we know about the Aruni?" Reynolds asked, turning to Intelligence Officer Park. "Peaceful species, sir. Their planet has approximately 0.7 Earth gravity, breathable atmosphere with higher oxygen content than we're used to. Their civilization emphasizes cultural development and diplomacy over military power. They've established contact with numerous other species, but have maintained a policy of non-interference. And yet something has them sending out a desperate call for help," Reynolds mused. "Any theories on what we might be facing?" "Intelligence is limited, sir," Park admitted. "It could be anything from a natural disaster to an invasion by an unknown hostile force. The SOS signal doesn't contain specific details, just an urgent request for immediate assistance." Reynolds frowned. Going in with limited intelligence was far from ideal, but the continuous nature of the distress signal suggested that whatever threat the Aruni faced was still ongoing. "Major Lin, status of our ground forces?" Major Lin, the commander of the expedition's marine contingent, stepped forward. A compact woman with the efficient movements, characteristic of someone born and raised in Earth's gravity. She exemplified the Deathworlder physique that made humans so formidable off-world. 30,000 troops ready for deployment, sir. All trained for varied gravity environments and equipped with the latest combat systems. Whatever we're facing, we're prepared." Reynolds nodded, satisfied. "Our primary mission remains humanitarian, but we need to be ready for any scenario. I want all ships to maintain combat readiness throughout the journey." As final preparations were completed, Reynolds addressed the assembled fleet commanders via holographic conference. "We are about to embark on an unprecedented mission," he began, his voice resolute. "A peaceful civilization has called for our help, and we will answer. We don't yet know what awaits us in the Aruni system, but whatever threat they face, we will meet it with the full might of Earth's forces. Some of you may be wondering why we're committing such resources to aid a species we've never formally met. The answer is simple: because we can. Because Earth has always defined itself by its willingness to stand against tyranny and destruction, wherever they may arise. Our advanced scouts will arrive in the Aruni system in 36 hours. The main fleet will follow 6 hours later. Be prepared for anything. But remember, our goal is to save lives, not take them unnecessarily." With that, Reynolds gave the order, and the massive fleet began to move. Thousands of fusion drives ignited simultaneously, propelling humanity's armada toward the Arcturus relay station, where they would make the final jump to the Aruni system. As the fleet departed, Reynolds couldn't help but wonder what they would find when they arrived. The Aruni were known to be peaceful, perhaps even naive by human standards. What could possibly threaten such a civilization so severely that they would broadcast a desperate plea across the stars? Whatever it was, Reynolds was determined to meet it with everything humanity had to offer, for better or worse. Aboard the Aurora, Ambassador Selena grew increasingly frustrated as her communications officers reported another failed attempt to contact Eloria's central government. "This interference makes no sense," she said, studying the technical readouts. "It's almost as if something is deliberately jamming our frequencies." "We're picking up an unusual signal originating from the planet," reported her communications officer. "It appears to be an emergency beacon of some kind, broadcasting on multiple bands." Selena frowned. "An emergency beacon? For what purpose? The planet looks perfectly normal from our scans." "I don't know, Ambassador, but it's an old format, possibly from before your time or mine." A cold feeling settled in Selena's stomach. "Show me the exact frequencies it's broadcasting on." When the data appeared on her screen, Selena's large eyes widened in alarm. "This can't be right. This is broadcasting on the Deathworlder band, frequencies primarily used by high-gravity species." "Is that significant?" asked her aide. "Extremely," Selena replied, her voice tight with concern. "That band is monitored by several militaristic species, including the humans of Sol 3. "The humans? But we've never even established formal contact with them." "No, but we've observed them extensively." Selena began pacing, her mind racing through potential implications. "They're a warrior species with incredible physical resilience and a massive military capacity. If they've received this signal—" She didn't finish the thought, instead turning to her pilot. "Change of plans. We need to land immediately. Take us directly to the capital." As the Aurora altered course and began its descent toward Aloria's surface, Selena could only hope they weren't already too late to prevent a catastrophic misunderstanding. On Earth, the massive industrial complexes that supported humanity's interstellar fleet had shifted into emergency production mode. The deployment order had triggered automated systems across the planet, with factories working at maximum capacity to produce additional armaments, medical supplies, and the specialized equipment needed for operations on lower-gravity worlds. In training facilities around the globe, soldiers prepared for potential combat in alien environments. While all had undergone basic training for varied gravity conditions, few had expected to deploy so suddenly or in such numbers. At Fort Armstrong, the largest military training complex in North America, Major Elena Vasilyev supervised the final preparations of her battalion. As a veteran of 3 off-world conflicts, she was one of the most experienced field commanders available for the mission. "Remember your gravity discipline," she shouted to the assembled troops. "Aloria is 0.7 Earth standard. That means you'll feel stronger, faster, but also less controlled. One wrong move and you could injure yourself or an Aruni civilian." The soldiers, clad in the adaptive combat armor designed for interplanetary deployment, listened attentively. Many were experiencing a mixture of excitement and apprehension. This would be the first contact with the Aruni civilization, and it would come in the context of a military intervention. "We don't know what we're facing," Vasilyev continued. "But the Aruni are a peaceful species. They wouldn't have activated an emergency beacon unless the situation was dire. Our primary mission is to protect and evacuate civilians if necessary. Rules of engagement are strict. No firing unless fired upon or directly ordered." As the troops dispersed to their final equipment checks, Vasilyev was approached by one of her company commanders, Captain Rodriguez. "Major, the men are asking, what if this is some kind of trap? What if the Aruni aren't really in danger?" Vasilyev considered the question carefully. "Intelligence doesn't support that theory. Captain, the Aruni have no history of aggression or deception. Besides, what would they gain by luring 1,000 Earth warships to their doorstep?" Rodriguez nodded, though his expression remained concerned. "It's just, this all seems to be happening very quickly. The Council's decision, the deployment. Some of us can't help but wonder if there's more to this situation than we've been told." "Trust the chain of command, Captain," Vasilyev replied firmly. "Colonel Reynolds wouldn't commit to this operation without good reason. If the Aruni have called for help, it's our duty to respond." As Rodriguez departed, Vasilyev turned her gaze skyward, where the stars were just becoming visible in the twilight. Somewhere out there, the advanced elements of Earth's fleet were already approaching the Aruni system. Whatever awaited them, humanity's response would likely shape interstellar relations for generations to come. In orbit around Aloria, engineers worked frantically to deactivate the malfunctioning beacon. Dr. Varick, the foremost expert on historical technology, had been transported to the orbital facility that housed the ancient emergency systems. "The problem is the redundancies," he explained to the team of specialists gathered around him. "This system was designed during a more paranoid era of our history, when the possibility of hostile first contact seemed more likely. Once activated, it's programmed to continue broadcasting until it receives a specific shutdown sequence. "And we don't have that sequence?" asked one of the younger engineers. "Oh, we have it," Varric replied with a grimace. "But the system is also designed to ignore the shutdown sequence if it detects what it interprets as ongoing danger." "What kind of danger?" "That's the problem. The energy storm that accidentally triggered the beacon is still affecting our orbital instruments. The beacon's primitive sensors are interpreting this as an attack pattern." Varric turned to the station's viewport, gazing out at the swirling energy disturbance that had precipitated the crisis. What had initially appeared to be a minor solar flare had developed into a complex electromagnetic phenomenon that was playing havoc with Aeloria's more sensitive equipment. "We need to stabilize the energy readings first," he decided. "Once the beacon no longer detects a threat pattern, we can implement the shutdown sequence." "How long will that take?" asked the station commander. Varric hesitated before answering. "Under ideal conditions, 12 hours. With this interference, perhaps 36. "That's too long," the commander replied, alarm evident in his voice. "The Council believes the humans may already be on their way." "Then we need to find another solution," Varric said firmly. "If we can't shut down the beacon, perhaps we can modify its message, change it from a distress call to an all-clear signal." "Is that possible?" "Theoretically, yes. The beacon's transmission protocols are primitive but flexible. If we can access its core programming—" "Do it," ordered the commander. "Whatever resources you need are at your disposal." As Varric and his team set to work, none of them realized that the advanced scouts of Earth's fleet had already entered the outer reaches of the Aruni system, their sensitive instruments detecting the unusual energy patterns surrounding Aeloria. Lieutenant Commander Hiroshi Tanaka, commanding the scout vessel Pathfinder, studied the sensor readings with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "These energy signatures don't match any known weapon system," he reported to Colonel Reynolds via secure quantum channel. "They appear to be natural in origin, possibly a solar event of some kind." "Any sign of hostile vessels?" Reynolds asked, his holographic image flickering slightly with the distance of the transmission. "Negative, sir. We've detected approximately 30 Aruni ships in orbit, but none show military configurations. They appear to be civilian vessels, research platforms, and a few larger structures that might be space stations." "What about the planet itself?" "No evidence of widespread destruction or military activity," Tanaka reported. "However, there is significant communications traffic, much of it seemingly distressed or urgent in nature." Reynolds frowned, the tactical assessment not matching what they had expected based on the catastrophic distress call. Could this be the calm before the storm? Perhaps they've detected an incoming threat that hasn't arrived yet? "Possible, sir. But our long-range sensors aren't picking up anything approaching the system. Whatever has the Aruni concerned appears to be local." "Maintain your position at the system's edge," Reynolds ordered. "Continue passive observation, but do not approach the planet yet. The main fleet will arrive in 6 hours." "And if we're contacted by the Aruni?" Reynolds considered this for a moment. "Acknowledge any communication but reveal minimal information about our capabilities or intentions. We need more intelligence before committing to any specific course of action." As the transmission ended, Tanaka turned to his sensor officer. "Continue monitoring all frequencies. If the Aruni try to communicate with us, I want to know immediately." Meanwhile, on Aeloria's surface, Ambassador Selena had finally reached the planetary capital and was rushing toward the Central Council chambers. The city, with its soaring crystalline towers and verdant garden terraces, showed no signs of catastrophe or panic, just the normal bustle of Aruni daily life, albeit with a noticeable increase in official vehicles and security personnel. "This makes no sense," Selena muttered to her aide as they hurried along an elevated walkway connecting two government buildings. "If we're facing a civilization-ending threat, Why is everything so normal? Perhaps the Council is keeping the situation contained to prevent panic? No. Selena shook her head. Our society doesn't operate that way. Transparency has always been our policy, especially in times of crisis. As they entered the Council building, they were immediately directed to the Emergency Operations Center, a rarely used facility deep within the structure. There, Council leader Terran and his advisors were gathered around a holographic display showing the Aruni system, with particular focus on the unusual energy phenomenon and, more worryingly, several small vessels at the system's edge. Ambassador Selena, Terran greeted her, his expression revealing both relief and concern. We've been trying to reach you. What is happening? Selena demanded, gesturing toward the display. Why is an emergency beacon broadcasting a catastrophic distress call when there's clearly no catastrophe? A malfunction, Terran explained grimly. The energy storm triggered an ancient beacon system that we were unaware was still operational. It's broadcasting on multiple frequencies, including the Deathworlder band, Selena finished. I know. And those vessels, she pointed to the markers at the edge of the system. Unknown, but given their position and approach vector, we believe they may be human. Selena felt a chill run through her. They received the distress call and they're responding. How many? Our long-range sensors have detected what appears to be a massive fleet, assembling near the Arcturus relay station. Preliminary estimates suggest hundreds of vessels, possibly more. Hundreds! Selena's voice rose in alarm. The humans are deploying their entire military capacity based on a false alarm? So it would seem, Terran confirmed. And our attempts to send a clarification have been unsuccessful due to the interference from the energy storm. We need to establish direct contact, Selena insisted, before this misunderstanding escalates further. Agreed. That's why we've been trying to reach you. You're our foremost expert on Deathworlder species. If anyone can communicate effectively with the humans, it's you. Selena nodded, her mind already racing through possible approaches. I'll need a secure communication channel, isolated from the interference if possible, and I'll need all available intelligence on the human vessels currently in our system. You'll have whatever you need, Terran assured her. But please, Ambassador, hurry. Dr. Varric estimates that the main human fleet will arrive within hours. As Selena was led to a specialized communications facility, she couldn't help but marvel at the irony of the situation. The Aruni, who had always prided themselves on their diplomatic skills and cultural understanding, now faced their greatest diplomatic challenge, convincing a warrior species not to save them from a non-existent threat. Aboard the Dauntless, Colonel Reynolds was growing increasingly perplexed by the reports from his advanced scouts. The situation in the Aruni system did not match what they had expected based on the catastrophic distress signal. No signs of attack, no evidence of natural disaster, he muttered, reviewing the latest data. Yet the beacon continues to broadcast. Could it be internal? Suggested Commander Reyes. Perhaps a political situation, a coup or civil conflict. Possible, Reynolds acknowledged, but unlikely given what we know of Aruni society. They have no history of significant internal strife. Then what are we missing? Before Reynolds could respond, Communications Officer Torres interrupted. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Aruni system. It's being broadcast on multiple frequencies, including our primary command channel. Reynolds straightened. Source? It appears to be coming from the planet's surface. Sir, the signal is somewhat degraded, but it's definitely directed specifically at our fleet. Put it through. The main view screen flickered, and after several moments of static, an image formed. An Aruni female with the distinctive iridescent skin and large, expressive eyes, characteristic of her species. This is Ambassador Selena of the Aruni Central Council, she began, her voice clear despite the occasional interference. I am attempting to contact the commander of the approaching Earth fleet. Reynolds stepped forward. This is Colonel Marcus Reynolds of the Earth Defense Force. We received your distress signal and have responded with humanitarian and military support. Please clarify the nature of the emergency your people are facing. There was a brief pause, and for a moment, Reynolds thought the connection had been lost. Then, Selena's voice returned, tinged with what sounded like embarrassment. Colonel Reynolds, I must inform you that there is no emergency. The distress beacon was activated accidentally during an unusual energy storm in our system. We are not under attack, not facing any natural disaster, and not in need of military intervention. Reynolds blinked, processing this unexpected information. Ambassador, the signal we received was a Category 1 distress call, indicating an extinction-level threat to your civilization. Yes, and for that misunderstanding, I offer our deepest apologies. Selena replied. The beacon in question is an ancient system that we believed had been decommissioned centuries ago. The energy storm damaged its sensor array, causing it to interpret the electromagnetic disturbance as an attack pattern. Reynolds exchanged glances with his officers, detecting skepticism in their expressions that matched his own. A simple malfunction seemed an inadequate explanation for such a serious situation. Ambassador, with all due respect, our fleet is already en route based on your distress call. We've committed significant resources to this rescue operation, and we are profoundly grateful for your willingness to assist, Selena said quickly. It speaks to the nobility of humanity that you would respond so decisively to the needs of a species you've never even formally met. But I assure you, Colonel, the emergency is a false alarm. If your fleet enters our system in force, it may create diplomatic complications with other species in the region who might misinterpret your arrival. Reynolds considered this carefully. While he wanted to believe the ambassador, years of military experience had taught him to be cautious. Could this be a deception? Perhaps the Aruni were under duress, being forced to transmit this message by whoever was truly threatening them. Ambassador, if you're currently under coercion, there are ways you could indicate this to me without alerting those who might be monitoring this conversation. Selena's expression shifted to one of understanding. You believe I might be speaking under duress. A reasonable concern, Colonel. But I assure you that is not the case. I am transmitting from our Central Council facility with the full knowledge and support of our leadership. The only threat we currently face is the potential for misunderstanding between our peoples. Still not entirely convinced, Reynolds decided to probe further. If there is no emergency, why does the beacon continue to broadcast? Our engineers are working to deactivate it, Selena explained. The system was designed with multiple redundancies that make it difficult to shut down while the energy storm continues to affect our instruments. Dr. Varick, our leading expert on historical technology, estimates that it will take approximately 30 more hours to fully deactivate the beacon. 30 hours, Reynolds repeated. By that time, our main fleet will have arrived in your system. Which is why I'm contacting you now, Selena said urgently. Colonel, I formally request that you halt your fleet's advance until we can resolve the situation. Perhaps a small delegation could proceed to Aloria to verify our claims, but a full military deployment is unnecessary and potentially problematic. Reynolds fell silent, weighing his options. His orders from the Unified Defense Council were clear. Respond to the Aruni distress call with all available forces. Yet the situation had changed dramatically with this new information. I'll need to consult with Earth Command, he finally said. In the meantime, I'm dispatching a diplomatic vessel to your planet. I request that you provide landing coordinates and guarantee their safety. Of course, Selena agreed readily. We would welcome the opportunity for direct dialogue. I will personally meet your representatives. As the transmission ended, Reynolds turned to his officers. Thoughts? It could be a trap, suggested Security Chief Alvarez. "Drawing in a small delegation while keeping our main force at bay." "To what end?" countered Commander Reyes. "If they wanted to ambush us, why not let the entire fleet enter the system?" "Cultural misunderstanding," offered Intelligence Officer Park. "Perhaps what they consider no emergency would still qualify as a crisis by our standards." Reynolds nodded, considering each perspective. "Prepare a secure transmission to Earth Command. They need to be aware of this development. And contact the envoy. I want Ambassador Chen and a small security detail ready to depart for Aloria within the hour." "And the fleet, sir?" Reynolds made his decision. "Maintain current course but reduce speed. I want our arrival delayed by at least 12 hours. That should give our delegation time to assess the situation firsthand." As his officers moved to carry out his orders, Reynolds continued to study the tactical display showing the Aruni system. Something about this situation still didn't feel right, but he couldn't determine if his unease stemmed from legitimate concerns or simply the warrior's instinct for caution that had been ingrained throughout his career. Either way, humanity's first official contact with the Aruni civilization was about to occur under far different circumstances than anyone had anticipated. On Aloria, preparations were quickly made to receive the human diplomatic vessel. Ambassador Selena, having successfully established initial contact with Colonel Reynolds, now found herself thrust into the role of humanity's first official Aruni contact. "The humans are sending a ship called the Envoy," she informed Council Leader Terran. "It will arrive within 6 hours and carry their diplomatic representatives along with a security detail." "Security detail?" Terran repeated with concern. "Armed soldiers?" "Almost certainly," Selena confirmed. "Remember, the humans still aren't entirely convinced that we're not facing some kind of threat. From their perspective, sending armed protection for their diplomats is a reasonable precaution. But weapons in the capital district? We'll need to make an exception," Selena insisted. "The humans come from a high-gravity world with a history of conflict. Their cultural perspective on security differs significantly from ours. Asking them to disarm completely for this first meeting would be seen as either naive or suspicious." Terran sighed, but nodded in agreement. "Very well. Make whatever arrangements you deem necessary. Our priority must be establishing clear communication and convincing them to halt their fleet's advance." As Selena departed to prepare for the humans' arrival, Terran turned to his advisors. "What's the status of the beacon?" "Dr. Varric reports limited progress," replied one of the counselors. "The energy storm is beginning to dissipate, but not quickly enough. The beacon continues to broadcast the distress signal." "And the human fleet?" "Our long-range sensors indicate they've reduced speed, but continue to approach. At their current velocity, the main force will reach our system in approximately 18 hours. Terran's expression grew grim. "Then, we have 18 hours to convince them that we're not in danger before 1,000 warships arrive in our space." In orbit, around Aloria, Dr. Varric and his team continued their efforts to deactivate the malfunctioning beacon. Despite hours of work, the ancient system remained stubbornly operational, its emergency protocols resisting their attempts to implement the shutdown sequence. "We need to try something different," Varric declared, pushing away from the console he'd been working at for the past 4 hours. "The conventional approach isn't working." "What do you suggest?" asked one of his assistants. Varric paced the small control room, his mind racing through possibilities. "If we can't shut it down properly, perhaps we can overload it." "Overload? But that could damage other systems connected to the same power grid." "Not if we isolate it first," Varric explained, his enthusiasm growing as the idea took shape. "We sever all connections to the main grid, then create a controlled power surge that will burn out the beacon's internal systems." "That's incredibly risky," objected the station commander, "and potentially irreversible. So is having 1,000 human warships arrive in our system because they think we're being annihilated," Varric countered. "Sometimes the best solution isn't the most elegant one." After a brief debate, The commander reluctantly authorized Varick's plan. As the engineering team began the delicate process of isolating the beacon's power systems, Varick couldn't help but reflect on the irony of the situation. The very device that had been created to save their civilization in its darkest hour now threatened to create a diplomatic crisis, unlike any in Aruni history. 6 hours later, the human diplomatic vessel Envoy entered Aloria's atmosphere, descending toward the designated landing coordinates in the capital city. The sleek craft, significantly smaller than the warships that comprise the bulk of Earth's fleet, nevertheless projected an unmistakable military presence with its armored hull and visible defensive systems. Ambassador Selena waited on the landing platform, accompanied by a small delegation of Aruni officials. As the Envoy's engines powered down and its landing ramp extended, she took a deep breath, reminding herself of everything she had learned about human customs and communication styles during her years studying Deathworlder species. The first figure to emerge from the ship was clearly a soldier, tall and muscular by Aruni standards, clad in a form-fitting combat suit that, while not overtly threatening, was unmistakably designed for protection. 5 similarly equipped humans followed, forming a perimeter around the ramp before the diplomatic contingent appeared. Leading the diplomats was a human female of middle years, her posture straight and her expression carefully neutral. Ambassador Selena, I am Ambassador Rebecca Wilson of Earth's Diplomatic Corps. Thank you for receiving us on such short notice. Selena stepped forward, offering the traditional Aruni greeting gesture, palms extended outward at chest level, fingers splayed. Ambassador Wilson, welcome to Eloria. I regret that our first meeting occurs under such awkward circumstances. Wilson smiled slightly, returning a close approximation of the Aruni gesture, before extending her hand in the human custom of shaking. Diplomacy often thrives on resolving awkward circumstances. Ambassador. As the two delegations exchanged formal greetings, Selena couldn't help but notice the human security personnel scanning their surroundings with professional vigilance. Their movements were measured but purposeful, their eyes constantly evaluating potential threats in an environment that, to the Aruni, was among the safest places on the planet. I've arranged for us to proceed directly to the Central Council chambers, Selena explained as the formalities concluded. Council Leader Taryn is eager to meet with you, and we believe it's important to address the misunderstanding as quickly as possible. Of course, Wilson agreed. Though I should inform you that my authorization extends only to fact-finding. Any decisions regarding the fleet's deployment remain with Colonel Reynolds and Earth Command. Understood, Selena replied, trying to mask her disappointment. She had hoped the human diplomat would have broader authority to resolve the situation. As they boarded the transport vehicles that would take them to the council building, Ambassador Wilson gazed out at the Aruni capital city with evident curiosity. Your world is beautiful, she commented. Much like the descriptions in our database, though they hardly do it justice. You've studied us, Selena asked, somewhat surprised. Of course, Wilson replied. Earth maintains extensive databases on all known sentient species. The Aruni have been of particular interest, given your diplomatic accomplishments in this sector. Yet we've never established formal contact. Wilson's expression became more measured. Earth's policy has been one of cautious observation before engagement, particularly with species from lower gravity environments. Our physical differences sometimes create complications. Selena understood the diplomatic understatement. Humans, with their greater density and strength, had sometimes inadvertently injured representatives of other species during first contact situations. It was one of many reasons why Deathworlder species were often approached with a mixture of respect and wariness. I assure you, Ambassador, we're well aware of the physiological differences between our peoples. All necessary accommodations have been made. Wilson nodded appreciatively. Thank you. Now, Perhaps you could brief me further on this energy storm and the malfunctioning beacon while we travel. Colonel Reynolds was particularly interested in understanding how such a critical system could activate accidentally. As Selina began explaining the technical details, she couldn't help but notice the subtle skepticism in Ambassador Wilson's questions. The humans, it seemed, were not yet convinced that the emergency was truly a false alarm. Aboard the Dauntless, Colonel Reynolds reviewed the latest reports from the advanced scouts with growing concern. The situation in the Aruni system continued to present contradictions that defied easy explanation. "The energy storm is real enough," reported Lieutenant Commander Tanaka via secure channel. "Our sensors confirm unusual electromagnetic activity in the planet's upper atmosphere, consistent with the Aruni explanation." "And the beacon?" "Still broadcasting, sir. We've isolated its location to an orbital facility above the planet's northern hemisphere. There does appear to be significant activity around it, possibly repair crews or technical personnel." Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. "Any military movement? Ship deployments? Defense system activations?" "Negative, sir. The Aruni vessels we've observed maintain standard orbital patterns. No weapon signatures detected." This aligned with what Ambassador Selina had told him: a technical malfunction rather than a genuine emergency. Yet, something still nagged at Reynolds, a soldier's instinct that had saved his life more than once during his career. "What about that energy storm? Could it be artificial? Some kind of weapon test or defense system?" Tanaka hesitated before responding. "Our science officer believes it's natural in origin, sir. Similar phenomena have been observed in other systems, with comparable stellar compositions." Reynolds sighed, frustrated by the lack of a clear threat to justify the massive deployment he had initiated. "Keep monitoring. I want to know immediately if anything changes. The envoys should have landed by now. We'll await their assessment before making any further decisions." As the transmission ended, Commander Reyes approached with a data tablet. "Sir, message from Earth Command. They're concerned about the latest developments." Reynolds took the tablet, scanning the message quickly. As expected, the Unified Defense Council was expressing growing unease about committing so many resources to what might be a false alarm. The political implications of such a massive deployment, particularly if unnecessary, could be significant. "They want us to delay further," Reynolds noted, his expression hardening. "Reduce our approach speed again and hold at the system's edge until the envoy confirms the Aruni claims." "Is that wise, sir? If there is a genuine threat, then every hour we delay could cost Aruni lives," Reynolds finished grimly. "I'm aware of the stakes, Commander." After a moment's consideration, Reynolds made his decision. "Maintain current speed. Inform Earth Command that we're proceeding according to the original timeline, but will establish a holding position at the system boundary rather than approaching the planet directly. That should satisfy their concerns while keeping us in position to respond, if needed." Reyes nodded and moved to relay the orders. Reynolds turned back to the tactical display, studying the representation of the Aruni system. In 18 hours, the bulk of Earth's fleet would arrive at its edge, creating a situation unprecedented in human history, a massive show of force in response to what increasingly appeared to be a simple technical malfunction. The diplomatic implications alone were staggering. If handled poorly, this incident could define humanity's relationship with the Aruni for generations to come, potentially affecting their standing with other civilizations in the region as well. Let's hope Ambassador Wilson is as good at diplomacy as her record suggests, Reynolds muttered to himself. Otherwise, we may be remembered as the species that sent 1,000 warships to fix a broken radio. In the Central Council chambers of Aloria, Ambassador Wilson and her delegation sat across from Council Leader Terran and the Aruni representatives. The Grand Hall, with its soaring crystalline architecture and living plant elements, provided a striking backdrop for this historic first meeting between the two species. "We understand your skepticism," Terran was saying, his translator conveying his words into English. In your position, we too would require verification. That is why we have provided complete access to our communication systems, sensor logs, and the technical specifications of the malfunctioning beacon. Wilson reviewed the data on her tablet, her expression revealing nothing of her thoughts. The human security personnel remained positioned near the chamber's entrance, their vigilance undiminished despite the clearly peaceful environment. This information is certainly comprehensive, Wilson acknowledged. However, Colonel Reynolds has requested direct access to the orbital facility where the beacon is located. He believes a first-hand inspection by our technical experts would help resolve any remaining questions. Terran exchanged glances with Selena before responding. That can be arranged. Dr. Varick is currently overseeing efforts to deactivate the beacon. I'm sure he would welcome additional expertise, particularly from those familiar with the frequencies being affected. Excellent, Wilson said with a nod. I'll inform Colonel Reynolds immediately. In the meantime, perhaps we could discuss the broader implications of this situation. Despite the unfortunate circumstances, it does present an opportunity for our civilizations to establish formal diplomatic relations. We would welcome such an outcome. Terran agreed readily. The Aruni have long believed in the value of diverse perspectives in galactic affairs. Earth's unique experiences and capabilities would be a significant addition to the interstellar community. As the diplomatic discussions continued, technicians in both delegations worked to establish a secure communication channel to the orbital facility. Within the hour, a joint inspection team was assembled, with human engineers preparing to join Dr. Varick's efforts to deactivate the problematic beacon. Meanwhile, in orbit, Varick's attempt to overload and disable the beacon had encountered unexpected complications. The ancient system's redundancies were proving even more robust than anticipated, with backup power sources activating whenever they attempted to induce a critical failure. It's as if it was designed to resist any attempt to silence it, Varick muttered in frustration, wiping perspiration from his brow as he examined yet another failed simulation. Dr. Varick, called one of his assistants. We're receiving a transmission from the surface. The humans have sent a diplomatic delegation, and they're requesting permission to send technical personnel to assist us. Varick straightened, surprised by this development. The humans are here already? I thought their fleet was still hours away. This is an advanced diplomatic vessel. Apparently, Council Leader Terran has authorized their involvement. Varick considered this for a moment. While he had some reservations about allowing off-worlders, particularly Deathworlders, access to Aruni technology, he couldn't deny that the situation had reached a critical point. If the humans possessed insights that could help deactivate the beacon before their main fleet arrived, it would be foolish to refuse their assistance. Very well, he decided. Tell them we'll prepare for their arrival, and make sure all the structural reinforcements are in place. Remember, humans require additional support in our gravity environments. As preparations began for the human engineer's arrival, Varick returned to his console, running another series of simulations. The energy storm was beginning to dissipate, which should have made their task easier. But the beacon systems seemed to be adapting, interpreting the changing electromagnetic patterns as a new form of threat, rather than the natural fading of a harmless phenomenon. Stubborn old machine, he muttered, increasingly convinced that the beacon's designers had been unnecessarily paranoid in their approach to emergency protocols. Little did he know that his efforts were about to become even more complicated by the arrival of engineers from a species that approached technology with a fundamentally different philosophy, one shaped by centuries of conflict and the harsh realities of a Deathworld environment. In the capital city, Major Lin, who had accompanied the diplomatic mission as security chief, was conducting her own assessment of the situation. While Ambassador Wilson engaged in formal discussions with the Aruni leadership, Lin had been quietly observing the environment, evaluating potential threats, and forming her own conclusions about the purported emergency. "What do you think?" asked Captain Hayes, her second in command, as they stood somewhat apart from the main diplomatic gathering. "I think they're telling the truth," Lynn replied, keeping her voice low. "Everything I've seen supports their explanation. No heightened security, no emergency protocols, no evidence of recent combat or natural disaster. The beacon is still broadcasting, though technical malfunctions happen, even to advanced civilizations," Lynn reasoned. "And this one apparently involves some ancient system they barely remembered existed." Hayes nodded thoughtfully. "So you'll recommend standing down the fleet?" "That's above my pay grade," Lynn said with a slight smile. "But I'll report what I've observed. The Aruni aren't hiding anything that I can detect. They seem genuinely embarrassed by the whole situation." Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of an Aruni official, who informed them that transport was being arranged to take the human technical team to the orbital facility. Lynn would accompany them as security escort, while Ambassador Wilson continued diplomatic discussions on the surface. "I should inform Colonel Reynolds of these developments," Lynn said, excusing herself to establish a secure communication link with the Dauntless. When Reynolds received her report, his expression remained impassive, but there was a slight relaxation in his posture that suggested relief. "So your assessment aligns with the Aruni explanation?" he asked. "Yes, sir," Lynn confirmed. "Everything I've observed supports their claim that this is a technical malfunction, rather than a genuine emergency. They've been fully cooperative, providing access to their facilities and technical data without hesitation." Reynolds nodded slowly. "And you're accompanying our engineers to the orbital station?" "Correct, sir. We depart within the hour." "Very well, Major. Keep me informed of any developments. I'll relay your assessment to Earth Command and prepare to adjust our deployment accordingly." As the communication ended, Reynolds turned to Commander Reyes. "It seems our massive rescue operation may indeed be responding to a false alarm." "The Council won't be pleased," Reyes noted. "The resource commitment alone. Better an unnecessary deployment than failing to respond to a genuine distress call," Reynolds replied firmly. "But let's wait for confirmation from the technical team before making any final decisions." Aboard the orbital facility, Dr. Varick received word that the human engineers were en route. With mixed feelings of anticipation and apprehension, he prepared his team for their arrival, ensuring that all necessary accommodations had been made for the physical differences between their species. "Remember," he instructed his staff, "humans are significantly denser than we are due to their high-gravity origins. They may appear to move more deliberately in our environment, but don't underestimate their strength or reflexes." As final preparations were completed, Varick couldn't help but wonder how this unprecedented collaboration would unfold. The technical challenge of the malfunctioning beacon was complicated enough without adding the cultural and physiological differences between Aruni and human approaches to problem-solving. Yet, despite these concerns, he found himself genuinely curious about working alongside representatives of a Deathworlder species. Throughout his career, Varick had studied the technological achievements of various civilizations, and Earth's rapid advancement from planetary to interstellar capabilities was particularly impressive. Perhaps, he mused, this unfortunate incident might yield unexpected benefits. If human engineers could help resolve the beacon crisis, it could mark the beginning of a valuable technical exchange between their civilizations. With that hopeful thought, Varick returned to his simulations, determined to make at least some progress before the humans arrived. The main fleet was still approaching, and every minute the beacon continued broadcasting its false distress call increased the risk of diplomatic complications. Time, as always in engineering challenges, remained their most precious and limited resource. The shuttle carrying Major Lin and the human technical team docked with the Aruni orbital facility 3 hours later. As the airlock cycled and the inner doors opened, the humans were greeted by Dr. Varick and several Aruni engineers, all displaying the characteristic polite deference of their culture. "Welcome to Observation Station Northa," Varric said through his translator. "I am Dr. Varric, Chief Engineer for Historical Technologies. Thank you for offering your assistance with our embarrassing situation." The lead human engineer, a woman named Dr. Eliza Nakamura, stepped forward. "Thank you for having us, Dr. Varric. I'm Dr. Nakamura, specialized in emergency communication systems. This is my team, and Major Lin, who provides our security detail." Varric's gaze briefly shifted to Lin, noting the military bearing and obvious combat readiness, despite her diplomatic demeanor. The concept of armed security personnel in a scientific facility was foreign to Aruni culture, but he understood the human's caution given the circumstances. "Of course," he acknowledged. "Now, if you'll follow me, I'll show you to the Beacon Control Center and brief you on our efforts so far." As the group moved through the station, the human engineers observed their surroundings with professional interest. The Aruni facility, with its organic-inspired architecture and abundant plant life integrated into the structure, differed significantly from the more utilitarian designs favored by Earth's space installations. "Your life support systems are remarkably efficient," Dr. Nakamura commented, noticing the living walls that helped process the station's atmosphere. "Thank you," Varric replied. "We believe in harmonizing technology with biological processes whenever possible. It creates more resilient systems and a more pleasant environment for personnel." Upon reaching the control center, Varric brought up a holographic display showing the beacon's current status and the various attempts they had made to deactivate it. "As you can see, we've tried conventional shutdown protocols, power isolation, and even targeted system overloads," he explained. "The beacon's redundancies are stubborn." Dr. Nakamura studied the display intently. "This is an interesting design. The layered failsafes remind me of some of our early warning systems from Earth's pre-unification era." "That's precisely the problem," Varric agreed. "This beacon was designed during a more paranoid period of our history, when we feared hostile first contact. Its creators built it to resist any attempt to silence it until the perceived threat had definitively ended. And the energy storm is being interpreted as a continuing threat," Nakamura concluded. "Have you tried spoofing the all-clear signal sequence?" "Several times," Varric confirmed. "But the beacon's authentication protocols require multiple verification sources. With the storm interfering with our standard communication arrays, we haven't been able to generate a convincing all-clear." Nakamura exchanged glances with her team before turning back to Varric. "What if we approach this from a different angle? Instead of trying to shut down the beacon, what if we modify its message?" "We considered that," Varric admitted. "But the emergency protocols are hard-coded. We can't alter the content of the distress signal without accessing the core programming, which is physically isolated from the main systems." "Physical isolation," mused one of the human engineers. "That's actually good news. It means we don't need to hack the software. We just need to intercept and replace the signal itself." Varric's expression brightened as he grasped the implications. "A signal overlay. We could allow the beacon to continue broadcasting, but superimpose our own transmission on the same frequency." "Exactly," Nakamura confirmed. "We'd need to precisely match the carrier wave characteristics, but with enough power, we could effectively drown out the distress call with an all-clear message." For the next several hours, the combined team of Aruni and human engineers worked feverishly to implement this new approach. While the beacon itself remained stubbornly operational, they began assembling a secondary transmission system that would overlay its signal with a modified message explaining the situation. As they worked, Major Lin maintained regular communication with Colonel Reynolds, updating him on their progress. The main fleet had now reached the edge of the Aruni system, but remained in a holding pattern, awaiting final confirmation that intervention was unnecessary. "The technical solution is promising," Lin reported during one such communication. Dr. Nakamura believes they can have the overlay system operational within 4 hours. That's cutting it close, Reynolds replied, his holographic image showing signs of strain. Earth Command is growing increasingly concerned about the diplomatic implications of our presence here. The longer we maintain this posture, the more likely we are to attract attention from other species in the region. Understood, sir. We're working as quickly as possible. As Lin ended the transmission, she noticed Dr. Varick approaching, his expression troubled. Is everything all right, Doctor? She asked. I'm not certain, he admitted. Our sensors have detected unusual energy signatures at the system's edge, near your fleet's position. It may be nothing, but... Lin immediately re-established contact with the Dauntless. Colonel, the Aruni are detecting unusual energy readings near your position. Can you confirm? Reynolds's response was tense. We've noticed it too. Several of our vessels are reporting sensor anomalies. We're investigating now. Before further information could be exchanged, the communication suddenly cut out, replaced by static. Lin's expression hardened as she turned to Dr. Varick. We need to accelerate our timetable. Something's happening. At the edge of the Aruni system, Colonel Reynolds was facing a rapidly developing situation. Several vessels at the fleet's perimeter had begun experiencing system malfunctions, similar to those that had affected the Aruni beacon. Sensor misreadings, communication disruptions, and automated alert systems activating without apparent cause. It's the energy storm, reported Science Officer Chang. A secondary wave has reached the fleet's position. The electromagnetic interference is affecting our more sensitive systems. Can we compensate? Reynolds demanded. We're trying, sir. But some vessels are interpreting the interference as weapons lock-ons or incoming projectiles. 2 destroyer captains have already requested permission to raise shields and arm weapons. Reynolds cursed under his breath. This was exactly the kind of misunderstanding that could escalate to disaster. Deny those requests. All vessels are to maintain defensive posture alpha. Sensors only. No active targeting. No shield activation without my direct order. Sir, we've lost contact with the Envoy and Major Lin's team. Communications Officer Torres reported with concern. Keep trying, and establish contact with any Aruni vessels in range. They need to know what's happening. As the bridge crew worked to stabilize the situation, Reynolds felt the weight of command pressing down upon him. One wrong decision here could transform a diplomatic embarrassment into an interstellar incident, or worse. Sir, called out Torres suddenly, we're detecting an Aruni vessel approaching our position. They're broadcasting on multiple frequencies, including a direct tight beam to the Dauntless. Put it through, Reynolds ordered. The view screen flickered to life, revealing an Aruni face that Reynolds recognized from earlier communications. Ambassador Selena. Colonel Reynolds, she began without preamble. We've detected the energy wave reaching your fleet's position. The same phenomenon that triggered our beacon is now affecting your vessels. We're experiencing system malfunctions across multiple ships, Reynolds confirmed. Communications disruption, sensor anomalies. Our scientists believe this is a natural phenomenon, Selena explained quickly. A cascading electromagnetic pulse from our sun that happens approximately once every 70 years. We had forgotten about it because the last occurrence predated our use of sensitive electronic systems. Convenient timing, Reynolds couldn't help but comment. Not convenience. Colonel, causation. The initial wave is what triggered our ancient beacon in the first place. This secondary wave is part of the same stellar event. Reynolds considered this information, weighing it against his military training and instincts. If the Aruni were telling the truth, then both the original distress signal and the current disruptions affecting his fleet were indeed caused by a natural phenomenon. If they were lying. But to what end, he asked himself. Why would the Aruni lure Earth's fleet here, only to disable it? They lacked the military capacity to pose any threat to such a force, and doing so would inevitably result in devastating retaliation from Earth. Ambassador, we're losing communications with our vessels as the interference spreads. If your scientists understand this phenomenon, do they have any recommendations for protecting our systems? Yes, Selena replied, seeming relieved by his question. We're transmitting specifications for modifying your communication arrays to compensate for the interference. It's a relatively simple adjustment that should restore your fleet's internal coordination. The data package arrived moments later, and Reynolds immediately passed it to his technical officers for evaluation. After a tense few minutes, Chief Engineer Rosario looked up from her console. It checks out, sir. The modifications are straightforward and non-invasive. No security risks that I can detect. Reynolds nodded, making his decision. Implement the changes on the Dauntless first. If successful, distribute the specifications to the rest of the fleet. As the engineering team began applying the Aruni modifications, Reynolds turned his attention back to Ambassador Selena, who remained on the view screen. Ambassador, I appreciate your assistance, but I need to be absolutely certain. You guarantee that this is a natural phenomenon, not a weapon or deliberate intervention. You have my personal guarantee, Colonel, Selena replied firmly. And an invitation. Once communications are restored, I would welcome you to join us on the surface. See for yourself that Aloria faces no threat beyond this unfortunate misunderstanding. Reynolds considered the offer. Direct observation would provide the most reliable assessment of the situation, and perhaps help settle the lingering doubts that continued to nag at him, despite mounting evidence supporting the Aruni explanation. I accept your invitation, Ambassador. Once fleet communications are stabilized, I'll shuttle down to join Ambassador Wilson. As the transmission ended, Reynolds turned to Commander Reyes. You'll have command of the fleet in my absence. Maintain current position and continue implementing the Aruni modifications. No vessels are to approach the planet without my direct order. Yes, sir, Reyes acknowledged. And if the situation changes, use your judgment, Commander. But remember, we came here to help, not to start a war. On the orbital facility, the combined team of Aruni and human engineers had made significant progress on the signal overlay system. Dr. Nakamura and Dr. Varick worked side by side, their different approaches to problem-solving proving surprisingly complementary. The power requirements are higher than we anticipated, Varick noted, reviewing the latest simulations. We'll need to reroute energy from several station systems to generate a strong enough signal. What about your life support? Asked Nakamura with concern. We'll maintain essential functions, Varick assured her. But environmental controls, artificial gravity, and some other comfort systems will need to be temporarily powered down. Major Lin, who had been monitoring their progress while attempting to re-establish contact with the fleet, approached with news. We've received a transmission from Ambassador Selena. She's made contact with Colonel Reynolds and provided specifications to counter the interference affecting our ships. Excellent, Nakamura responded. That should buy us the time we need to complete this system. There's more, Lin continued. Colonel Reynolds is coming to the surface to meet with Ambassador Selena and see the situation firsthand. This news created a stir among both the human and Aruni personnel. Reynolds's direct involvement represented both an opportunity and a risk. His assessment would likely determine the ultimate resolution of the situation, but his military background might predispose him to see threats where none existed. We need to have this system operational before he arrives, Varick decided. If we can demonstrate that we're actively resolving the beacon issue, it should help reassure him of our intentions. The team redoubled their efforts, working with renewed urgency. As they did so, Major Lin pulled Dr. Nakamura aside for a private conversation. "What's your assessment of the Aruni?" she asked quietly. "Any signs of deception or hidden agenda?" Nakamura shook her head. "None whatsoever. Their explanation of the technical malfunction is completely consistent with the evidence, and Dr. Varick has been entirely transparent about their capabilities and limitations." Lin nodded, having reached the same conclusion based on her own observations. Then our priority should be helping them resolve this as quickly as possible, before any further misunderstandings occur. Agreed, Nakamura said. Though I must admit, from a purely professional perspective, this has been a fascinating collaboration. The Aruni approach to engineering is quite different from ours, less focused on redundancy and fail-safes, more on system harmony and elegance. Different worlds, different priorities, Lin commented. When your environment isn't constantly trying to kill you, you can afford to prioritize elegance over survivability. As they rejoined the main group, an alarm suddenly sounded throughout the station. One of the Aruni technicians looked up from her console with alarm. The energy wave is intensifying again, she reported. We're detecting a massive surge approaching the station. How long? Varric demanded. Minutes at most. This one is stronger than the previous waves. Varric turned to Nakamura, his expression grim. If this hits before we've completed the overlay system, the beacon might interpret it as an escalation of the non-existent threat. Nakamura finished his thought. Potentially changing or intensifying its distress signal, which the human fleet might interpret as confirmation that we're under attack, Varric concluded. The implications were clear to everyone present. They were racing against time to prevent a potential catastrophe, one triggered not by malice or aggression, but by the unfortunate intersection of natural phenomena and outdated technology. Divert all available power to the overlay system, Varric ordered. We need it operational now, even in a limited capacity. As the station's lights dimmed and the artificial gravity fluctuated, the engineers worked frantically to complete their task before the approaching energy wave could trigger a new and potentially more dangerous phase of the crisis. Colonel Reynolds's shuttle descended through Eloria's atmosphere, giving him his first direct view of the Aruni homeworld. Despite the tense circumstances, he couldn't help but appreciate the planet's beauty. Vast oceans of deep blue, continents covered in varied vegetation, and cloud patterns that created swirling designs across the surface. Quite different from Earth, commented Security Officer Jackson, who accompanied Reynolds along with a small protection detail. Lower gravity, higher oxygen content, more stable climate patterns. Reynolds replied, a gentle world that produced a gentle species. The shuttle was directed to a landing platform near the capital's diplomatic quarter, where Ambassador Wilson awaited alongside Ambassador Selena and several other Aruni officials. As Reynolds disembarked, he noted with approval that Wilson appeared relaxed and confident, a good sign that her assessment of the situation aligned with the increasingly evident reality that there was no actual threat to the Aruni. Colonel Reynolds, Wilson greeted him formally. Thank you for joining us planetside. Ambassador, Reynolds acknowledged with a nod before turning to Selena. Ambassador Selena, thank you for the invitation and for your assistance with our communication systems. We're grateful for your willingness to see the situation firsthand, Selena replied, and for your restraint in managing your fleet's deployment. As the formal greetings concluded, Selena led the group toward a nearby government building. Council Leader Terran is waiting to meet you. After that, we thought you might appreciate visiting our planetary monitoring center, where you can observe the energy storm directly and review our scientific data. Reynolds agreed to the proposed itinerary, his military training causing him to automatically note security details as they proceeded: access points, personnel movements, potential vulnerabilities. Yet he observed nothing that contradicted the Aruni claims of a peaceful civilization facing an embarrassing technical malfunction rather than a genuine threat. The meeting with Council Leader Terran was brief but cordial, with the Aruni leader expressing both gratitude for Earth's willingness to respond to their distress call and profound apologies for the confusion caused by the malfunctioning beacon. Had we known the old system was still operational, we would have decommissioned it properly centuries ago, Terran explained. This incident has revealed several oversights in our technological management that we will be addressing immediately. Reynolds nodded, understanding. On Earth, we have a saying, no battle plan survives contact with the enemy. In this case, it seems no technological system survives complete neglect. The subtle humor translated well, causing appreciative smiles among the Aruni delegation. As the meeting concluded, Reynolds felt his remaining suspicions continuing to fade. Everything he had observed supported the explanation he had been given. A peaceful civilization embarrassed by an antiquated system's malfunction. As they proceeded to the Planetary Monitoring Center, however, Reynolds received an urgent communication from Commander Reyes, aboard the Dauntless. Sir, we're detecting another energy surge approaching the Aruni system, stronger than the previous waves. Our modified communications are holding for now, but several vessels are reporting increased system instabilities. What about the orbital facility where our engineers are working on the beacon? They're directly in the path of the surge, sir. We've tried to warn them, but communications are degrading again. Reynolds turned to Ambassador Selena, who had noticed his changed demeanor. We have a situation. Another energy wave is approaching, stronger than before, and it's heading directly toward the orbital facility, where our engineers are working on the beacon. Selena's expression shifted to one of alarm. How soon? Minutes, according to my fleet. Selena immediately turned to a nearby Aruni official. Contact Station Northa immediately. Tell Dr. Varick to implement emergency protocols. The energy wave may disrupt communications, Reynolds pointed out. Then we'll use the emergency quantum channel, Selena replied, already moving toward a secure communications terminal. It's shielded against electromagnetic interference. As they rushed to establish contact with the orbital facility, Reynolds couldn't help but note how quickly the Aruni had shifted from diplomatic courtesy to crisis management. Further evidence that they were indeed dealing with a natural phenomenon rather than some elaborate deception. Aboard Station Northa, the combined team of Aruni and human engineers worked frantically to complete the signal overlay system before the approaching energy wave could trigger new complications. The station's non-essential systems had been powered down, creating an eerie environment of dim lighting and fluctuating gravity. Power coupling complete, announced Dr. Nakamura, making a final adjustment to the improvised transmitter. We're ready for initialization. Dr. Varick nodded, his fingers dancing across the control interface. Beginning broadcast sequence. Let's hope the signal is strong enough to override the beacon. As the system powered up, the monitoring displays showed their new transmission beginning to overlay the beacon's distress signal. For a moment, it appeared they had succeeded. The emergency broadcast was being gradually replaced by their modified message explaining the situation. Then the energy wave hit. The station shuddered violently, lights flickering and systems surging with unexpected power. Warning alarms blared throughout the facility as the overlay system sparked dangerously. "Power surge!" shouted one of the Aruni technicians. "The wave is stronger than predicted." Major Lin immediately took charge of the security situation. "Everyone away from the equipment. Move to the emergency shelters." As the engineering team scrambled to reach safety, Dr. Varick remained at his console, desperately trying to stabilize the overlay system. "We can't abandon it now," he insisted. "If the beacon interprets this surge as an attack escalation..." Dr. Nakamura moved to his side, despite Lin's orders. "He's right. We need to maintain the overlay signal, or the situation could worsen dramatically." Together, they worked to reroute power and compensate for the surge, even as systems around them sparked and failed. The station's structural integrity remained sound, but multiple systems were failing under the electromagnetic assault. "The beacon signal is changing," Varick noted with alarm, watching the monitoring display. "It's interpreting the surge as an intensification of the non-existent threat." "Can we compensate?" Nakamura asked, already adjusting their broadcast parameters. "I'm trying, but our overlay system is losing power. We need more transmission strength." In that moment, Major Lin made a critical decision. My shuttle's communication array. We can link it to your system for additional power. That could work, Nakamura agreed. But it would mean sacrificing your return vehicle. Better than sacrificing peace between our species, Lin replied firmly. Let's do it. As they rushed to implement this new plan, connecting the shuttle's powerful military-grade communication system to their jury-rigged overlay transmitter, the situation at the edge of the Aruni system was growing increasingly tense. Aboard the Dauntless, Commander Reyes watched with growing concern as the energy wave wreaked havoc with their systems, despite the Aruni modifications. More troubling still was the change they were detecting in the beacon's transmission. The signal has altered, sir, reported Communications Officer Torres. It's now broadcasting what appears to be a more urgent distress call. Is it genuine? Reyes demanded. Unknown. We've lost contact with Colonel Reynolds and the orbital facility. Reyes faced a commander's nightmare. Incomplete information requiring immediate decisions, with potentially catastrophic consequences. Had the Aruni been truthful about the technical malfunction? Or was there indeed some threat that had now escalated? Should he maintain the fleet's holding position as ordered, or advance to render assistance? Sir, interjected Intelligence Officer Park. I'm detecting unusual activity from the Aruni vessels near the planet. Several are changing orbit, moving toward the affected station. Weapons signatures? Negative, sir. They appear to be support vessels, possibly responding to the situation at the facility. This information provided Reyes with a crucial insight. The Aruni were treating this as an internal emergency, not a military situation. That aligned with their explanation of a natural phenomenon rather than an attack. Maintain position, Reyes ordered firmly. Continue attempts to re-establish communication with Colonel Reynolds and the orbital facility. Some of the captains are requesting permission to advance, sir, Torres reported. They're concerned about our people on the station. Denied, Reyes replied. We will not escalate the situation without clear evidence of threat. That was Colonel Reynolds' explicit order. His decision made. Reyes could only hope that the colonel would soon re-establish contact and provide clearer direction. In the meantime, Earth's massive fleet would hold its position, weapons powered down, a demonstration of restraint that might prove crucial for future relations between their species. On Aloria's surface, Colonel Reynolds and Ambassador Selena had managed to establish intermittent contact with Station Northa using the quantum channel. The communication was fragmented and unstable, but sufficient to understand the basic situation. They're attempting to maintain the overlay signal, Selena explained, interpreting the technical jargon from Dr. Varick. But the energy surge has damaged their system. What about our people? Reynolds asked. His primary concern being the safety of Major Lin and the human engineers. All personnel are reported safe, Selena assured him. But Major Lin has apparently connected her shuttle's communication array to the overlay system, sacrificing her return vehicle to strengthen the transmission. Reynolds felt a surge of pride at this news. Lin had assessed the situation correctly. Preventing a misunderstanding between their species was worth the loss of equipment. We need to inform my fleet about what's happening, he said. The changed beacon signal could be misinterpreted. We're attempting to establish direct contact using our planetary transmission array. Selena replied. It's more powerful than the orbital facilities and partially shielded from the energy storm. As they worked to re-establish communications with the fleet, Reynolds found himself in the unusual position of trusting an alien species he had only just officially met. Yet everything he had observed supported their explanation, and the Aruni response to the crisis focused on technical solutions rather than military posturing, aligned with what he had been told about their culture. Ambassador, he said, turning to Selena during a lull in the activity. Assuming we resolve this situation, I believe there's significant potential for cooperation between our peoples. Selena's expression brightened. I believe so too, Colonel. Though perhaps next time we can meet under less Dramatic circumstances. The moment of understanding was interrupted by an excited call from one of the Aruni technicians. "We've established contact with your vessel, the Dauntless." Reynolds moved quickly to the communication console, where Commander Reyes's image was now visible, though somewhat distorted by interference. "Commander, report," Reynolds ordered. "Sir, we're maintaining position as ordered, but the beacon signal has changed. It's now broadcasting what appears to be an escalated distress call." "It's a malfunction," Reynolds confirmed. "The energy surge has affected the beacon systems, but it remains a technical issue, not a genuine emergency. Major Lin and our engineers are working with the Aruni to resolve it." "Understood, sir," Reyes replied, visible relief in his expression. "Some of the captains were advocating for advancement to render assistance. Your restraint was appropriate. Commander, continue to hold position. I'll remain on the surface to coordinate with the Aruni leadership." As the communication ended, Reynolds turned back to Selena. "Now, we need to resolve the beacon situation before any other complications arise." "We may have a solution," Selena suggested. "If we can't shut down the beacon or completely override its signal, perhaps we can physically isolate it." "You mean jettison it from the station?" "Precisely. Once in space, its effective broadcast range would be significantly reduced, and we could then neutralize it safely away from our primary systems." Reynolds considered the proposal. "It's risky. The jettison process itself could be interpreted as an aggressive act by the beacon systems." "True. But Dr. Varick believes it's our best option, given the damage to the overlay system." After a brief discussion of the technical details, Reynolds agreed with the plan. Instructions were relayed to Station Northa, where the combined team began preparations to physically eject the problematic beacon from the facility. Aboard the station, Major Lin and the engineers worked to implement the new strategy. The beacon assembly was housed in a modular section of the facility that could, with proper preparations, be detached without compromising the station's overall integrity. "We'll need to maintain the overlay signal until the moment of jettison," Dr. Varick explained. "Otherwise, the beacon might interpret the disconnect as an attack and intensify its distress call." "My shuttle's array is still operational," Lin confirmed. "We can maintain the current signal strength." Dr. Nakamura was already working on the structural connections, preparing the beacon module for separation. "Once it's jettisoned, how will you neutralize it?" "We have several support vessels standing by," Varick explained. "They'll use targeted electromagnetic pulses to overwhelm and finally silence the beacon once it's at a safe distance." The preparations continued with remarkable cooperation between the Aruni and human personnel. Despite their different backgrounds and approaches, they had quickly formed an effective team, united by the common goal of preventing a potentially catastrophic misunderstanding. As they worked, Lin maintained regular communication with Colonel Reynolds on the surface, updating him on their progress and receiving information about the fleet's status. The energy storm was beginning to dissipate, which improved communications but also created a new urgency. If they were going to implement their plan, it needed to happen before systems fully normalized and the beacon potentially established new operational parameters. "We're ready for jettison," Varick finally announced. "All personnel should secure themselves. We'll experience momentary decompression in adjacent sections." As the team moved to secure positions, Lin made a final check of the overlay system. "Signal is stable. Ready when you are, Doctor." Varick nodded, his expression resolute. "Initiating separation sequence in 3, 2, 1. There was a momentary shudder throughout the station as mechanical connections disengaged. Then, with a controlled burst from positioning thrusters, the module containing the beacon began to move away from the facility. "Separation successful," reported one of the Aruni technicians. "The module is moving on the calculated trajectory." "Maintain overlay signal," Varick ordered, watching the beacon's telemetry carefully. "So far, it's not interpreting the separation as a threat." For several tense minutes, they monitored the module's progress as it drifted farther from the station. Then, at the predetermined safe distance. Varric gave the order. Support vessels, you are clear to neutralize the beacon. From their observation point, they watched as several Aruni ships converged on the drifting module. Precisely coordinated electromagnetic pulses enveloped the beacon, overwhelming its systems in a brief flash of energy. "Signal terminated," announced the communications officer with evident relief. "The beacon is silent." A cheer erupted from both Aruni and human personnel, the shared accomplishment bridging their differences in that moment of triumph. Major Lin immediately contacted Colonel Reynolds to report their success. "The beacon has been neutralized, sir. No casualties. Minimal damage to the station." "Excellent work, Major," Reynolds replied, his voice carrying genuine approval. "I'm informing the fleet now." As the immediate crisis resolved, attention turned to the implications of what had occurred. On the surface, Colonel Reynolds and Ambassador Selena joined Council Leader Terran in drafting a formal communication to Earth's Unified Defense Council, explaining the situation and expressing gratitude for humanity's response. Misguided, though it had ultimately proved to be. "Your willingness to commit such resources to assist a species you had never formally met speaks to the nobility of your civilization," Terran remarked as they finalized the message. "We responded to a call for help," Reynolds said simply. "That's what neighbors do." "Neighbors," Selena repeated thoughtfully. "I like that concept, though perhaps unusually formidable neighbors in your case." Reynolds smiled slightly. "Earth's history has made us cautious, sometimes to the point of paranoia, but it has also taught us the value of alliance and cooperation. Perhaps there is a middle path," Terran suggested, "a way to combine your strength with our diplomatic traditions." This conversation planted the seed for what would, in the coming months, develop into a formal alliance between Earth and Eloria, the foundation of what would eventually become known as the Interstellar Peace Preservation Alliance. At the edge of the Aruni system, Commander Reyes received the official stand-down order from Colonel Reynolds. The fleet's weapon systems, which had remained powered down throughout the crisis, would now be formally secured, and preparations would begin for the long journey home. "Most of the fleet will return to Earth," Reynolds explained in his order. "But I'm authorizing a small contingent to remain in the Aruni system temporarily, both as a goodwill gesture and to assist with any remaining technical issues." As the massive deployment began its careful withdrawal, a new chapter in interstellar relations was opening. The misunderstanding that might have led to catastrophe had instead created an opportunity for two very different civilizations to discover their complementary strengths. 3 days later, a formal ceremony was held in the Aruni capital to commemorate the establishment of diplomatic relations between Earth and Eloria. Colonel Reynolds, now serving as Earth's interim ambassador until a permanent diplomatic mission could be arranged, stood alongside Ambassador Selena as Council Leader Terran, formally welcomed humanity into the community of civilizations with whom the Aruni maintained peaceful relations. "From misunderstanding comes understanding," Terran declared in his address. "From potential conflict comes cooperation. Today, we recognize not only a new diplomatic relationship, but a new model for interspecies collaboration." The ceremony concluded with the announcement of a joint technological initiative, the development of an improved emergency communication system that would incorporate both Earth's emphasis on redundancy and security with Aruni principles of harmony and clarity. "The Interstellar Emergency Network," Selena explained to Reynolds afterward, "designed to prevent exactly the kind of misunderstanding that brought us together. Sometimes the best innovations come from the most unexpected circumstances," Reynolds observed. As the formal proceedings concluded, Reynolds found himself reflecting on the strange journey that had brought him to this moment. What had begun as a military rescue operation had transformed into a diplomatic breakthrough, potentially changing the course of interstellar relations for generations to come. Major Lin approached, now serving as his security chief for the interim diplomatic mission. Quite a change from commanding 1,000 warships, sir, she commented, with a slight smile. Indeed, Reynolds agreed, though I suspect this assignment may prove even more challenging in its own way. The engineers are already collaborating on the new communication network, Lin reported. Dr. Nakamura says the Aruni approach to technological design is revolutionizing their thinking. And what about Dr. Varick? Has he recovered from the embarrassment of the malfunctioning beacon? More than recovered, Lin replied with amusement. He's proposed a comprehensive review of all ancient Aruni technology to ensure there are no more forgotten surprises waiting to be accidentally activated. Reynolds nodded approval. A wise precaution. Perhaps we should consider a similar review of our own older systems. As the conversation continued, Ambassador Selena joined them, her iridescent skin catching the light of Eloria's setting sun. Colonel, Major, I hope you're finding our hospitality acceptable. More than acceptable, Reynolds assured her. Though I admit, adjusting to your gravity takes some concentration. I've already broken 2 chairs by sitting down too forcefully. Selena laughed, a melodic sound that reminded Reynolds how different their species were, yet how similar in the ways that truly mattered. We're reinforcing the furniture in the Earth diplomatic compound. Consider it another learning experience for both our peoples. As the evening progressed, discussions turned to the future, the exchange of knowledge, the potential for trade, the coordination of exploration efforts in regions of space, new to both civilizations. What had begun with a desperate distress call was evolving into a partnership that promised benefits for both worlds. 6 months later, the first official Earth embassy on Eloria was formally inaugurated, with Colonel Reynolds, now Ambassador Reynolds, presenting his credentials to Council Leader Terran in a ceremony broadcast to both worlds. Today marks not the beginning, but the continuation of a relationship born in unusual circumstances. Reynolds stated in his address, "What might have been a tragic misunderstanding instead became the foundation for understanding. What might have been conflict instead became cooperation." The centerpiece of the new embassy compound was a symbolic sculpture, a communication beacon, jointly designed by Aruni and human artists, representing both the incident that had brought their species together and their commitment to clear communication moving forward. And in orbit above Eloria, the first node of the new interstellar emergency network was activated, a system designed to prevent the very kind of misunderstanding that had nearly led to disaster. Built with the combined technological approaches of both civilizations, it represented a new era in interstellar communication. "Verification protocols active," reported Dr. Varick, who had been appointed to lead the Aruni side of the project. "Authentication systems online," confirmed Dr. Nakamura, his human counterpart. Ambassador Selena, watching from the control center alongside Ambassador Reynolds, smiled as the system came fully online. To think, all of this because of a malfunctioning beacon. "Sometimes the universe has strange ways of bringing people together," Reynolds observed, as they watched the network's status indicators show green across all parameters. Neither could have predicted how crucial this system would prove in the years to come, not just for their 2 worlds, but for the entire interstellar community. The Peace Preservation Alliance, born from a false alarm, would eventually grow to include dozens of civilizations, each bringing their unique strengths to a coalition dedicated to mutual protection and understanding. And it had all begun with a mistake, a forgotten beacon, an energy storm, and the unexpected response of a species once known only as Deathworlders, who had traveled across the stars, not to conquer, but to save.